So we discussed about the moral thinkers, right? So we discussed about the utilitarian concept. We discussed about deontological thought, and we've also discussed about virtue ethics. And apart from that, we talked about justice. We discussed from the perspective of Amartya Sen, and we have discussed about Jagdish Bhagwati. All these concepts we have done. Now in this session, what I'll do is I'll be talking about environmental ethics. Okay, so this is going to be very easy. Environmental ethics. So regarding this part, the case studies or the questions that we are going to get, we will discuss that later. The questions and the case studies will discuss later towards the end, not in this session, but I'll discuss with you the concept which is related to the environmental ethics. So mainly when we talk about environmental ethics, I'll be talking about sustainable development. Okay, so here we will discuss about sustainable development and the concepts associated with it. And I'll tell you, if a question you get in exam, what are the keywords which has to be there in your answer, whether it is case study or any theoretical question, the keywords which has to be there in this particular answer which is related to environmental ethics. So that is what we are doing in all the sessions. So here we are trying to just understand the concepts, and also we are trying to get that keywords which is required for writing the answer. Sharavanan, please turn off your mic. Okay, so when we discuss about environmental ethics, mainly I'm going to talk about, as I've told you, sustainable development. Okay, so what is the definition? I hope all of you know about this. Now before we move on to sustainable development, can you tell me the difference between growth and development? So when we discuss about growth, we only take into consideration what? The economic dimension, right? So we will only talk about economic dimension. That means we generally talk about growth from the perspective of increase in GDP. What is GDP and all these things we are not going to discuss at this point of time. So here we will be only focusing on GDP or increase in national income when we talk about the growth. Now one step ahead or one more step further when it comes to development. So what is the extra dimension which is added when it comes to development? Along with this economic dimension, what will be added? The social development, social aspect also will be coming into picture when it comes to development. So growth plus development, right? So growth by keeping social objective, that's what development. So sometimes that is when we discuss generally about development, or even without growth also, even without this economic dimension also, technically when you talk about development, it can be social only, because even without growth also, government can contribute, government can subsidize, and government can fund for social development. But that is not desirable. That is a different aspect of debate that we will be doing in economics later. But when we discuss about development, we are basically talking about economic and social. But technically speaking, even without growth also, there can be development. How? The government can contribute, right? But that is not considered desirable, and that is not considered good also, because it will lead to problems like fiscal deficit and all, and that is not desirable. So growth is required. At the same time, social dimension also has to be taken care. That's why when we discuss about development, there is a economic dimension and also social dimension is there. What is there when it comes to sustainable development? When it comes to sustainable development, there has to be increase in GDP. That means there should be increase in national income. That means the economic dimension is there, plus the social dimension is there, and also what is there? The environmental dimension is there. Okay, so here all the three should coexist when it comes to sustainable development. So if you see, this is how you can understand, or you can see the dimension like this. There is a social dimension, there is an economic dimension, and there is a environmental dimension. So these are the three dimensions of sustainable development. I'll come to the definition of sustainable development. That is very easy only. So when it comes to development, I've told you this alone, okay, you can take it as development even without economic growth also. But when it comes to sustainable development, all the three has to be there. Then only we talk, or we call, or we understand this as sustainable development. The concept of sustainable development is not all about protecting the environment. We need to protect environment, okay. At the same time, there has to be contribution from each and everyone. The development should be there, that must be contributed by each and every member. That means creation of employment opportunities, all are part of sustainable development. So everybody have to contribute. Okay, that means there should be growth. Without growth, nothing is actually going to happen. So growth has to be there. At the same time, development should be there, and it has to be environmental friendly also. So these are the three dimensions that we are discussing when it comes to sustainable development. So what is the actual meaning? This is the development that could be sustainable, right? So here you will see equity that we have discussed yesterday, that it calls for intergenerational equity, or we will see the definition, UNWCED. What is the definition? UN World Commission on Environment and Development. The development that meet the needs of the present generation without compromising the ability of the future generation to meet their respective needs. So I hope all of you know that definition, that you can just write in one line the definition of sustainable development given by this organization, UN World Commission on Environment and Development. Okay, the development that meet the needs of present generation. Anyway, it is there in Chronicle, so I have already told you to get that book, so there is no point in repeating the definition, and there is no point in you writing down during the class. You can just note down the lecture notes. So the development that meet the needs of present generation without compromising the ability of the future generation to meet their respective need. So it mainly called for what? Intergenerational equity. So intergenerational means between generation, it calls for equity. So we have to meet the needs of the present, at the same time it should not be by compromising the future. We cannot compromise the future generation, the needs of the future generation. So what the Gandhi statement also you can write in this context. You can just take down one statement: the earth has sufficient resources to meet the need of man, but not the greed. And you can start your essay also with this particular statement if you are attempting any environment related essays. Okay, so if you can start with this statement rather than any other random introduction, you can start with Gandhi's statement and it will be really good. Okay, that the statement is, earth has everything to satisfy our need but not our greed. But the problem is, human being will have needs, but when the basic needs are met, will create new needs, and that become greed, right? So the basic needs are like the shelter, food and dress, clothing, etc. Once it is met, they keep on creating needs. More needs lead to greeds, and the environment won't have enough to meet the greed, but there to meet the need. That's about the statement. You can write that statement in case if you get any essay in the beginning or in the conclusion, or even in ethics papers also. When it comes to environmental ethics, you can write this, and this is something which can be marketed very easily. So when we talk about the growth, I'm only talking about economic growth. Okay, when we talk about development, this is there, economic growth is there, at the same time social dimension is there. When it comes to this sustainable development, growth is there, at the same time development is there, and also environmental sustainability, or it should be environment friendly. So this is the three dimension that we need to discuss. Now if you move a bit further from here, I've seen the questions which can be asked in prelims also. I'll discuss in this context. I'll just discuss one concept here, that is indicators of sustainable development. This is not part of your ethics. Okay, indicators of sustainable development. One concept is green GDP. This for economy students I've already covered. So green GDP, you can just write one line over there, because these words you can use in your answers. Okay, even in ethics answers also you can use these words. So what is green GDP? It is a GDP adjusted for the cost of environment. But this is not practical, right? It is only a theoretical concept. Why it is not practical? Because this depreciation you cannot calculate. It is not easy to calculate, and that is the reason why even when we discuss about economy, GDP or NDP, which one is better? Which one is better actually? NDP is better. Why? Because NDP include depreciation. For example, you started a firm and the production of that firm is, let's say, 100 crore. But when you undertake the production, there must be some expenses, there must be some depreciation of the machinery, let's say 20 crore. But when it comes to GDP, what you're adding? You're adding 100 crore. But is that the real? No, you have to subtract this also, right? So effectively you should be adding 80 crore, and this is what net domestic product, subtracting the depreciation. But why we are not taking that? We are not taking that because it is very difficult to calculate the depreciation. And same as the concept here also, we talk about green GDP, it is a theoretical concept, and you don't know, you don't have any practical method to adjust the cost of environment. Developed countries are coming up with some methods and methodologies, but we don't have, we are not, it will be very subjective. So we can't go with that. Okay, we are planning, India is planning for that green GDP concept, but it is theoretical. Practically it is not possible to implement at any point of time. It will be difficult to implement, obviously, because there is limitation in the calculation of the cost of environment. Okay, so one more concept I'll discuss here. This is again from the perspective of prelims or your economy, that is genuine savings. Genuine savings. So any idea? Any one of you know this genuine savings? Genuine savings means the gross savings, this I hope all of you know, minus you have to subtract the depreciation of man-made capital. So what is this depreciation of man-made capital? That is when you get net, right? When you add the depreciation, that's when you get net. So first what I'm saying is you have to take net, okay? Net saving. This is actually the net saving. And from this what you need to subtract is, you have to subtract the depreciation in natural capital. So I've given you two indicators. One is green GDP, which is adjusted for the cost of environment. Second is genuine saving. So tell me, what is the problem with respect to this genuine saving? What do you think will be the problem here? See, let's suppose if you consider this as 1 and this is 2, this is 3. Okay, 1 minus 2 is what? 1 minus 2 is actually net only, net savings. Okay, what is the problem here? Depreciation in natural capital. So calculation of this itself is a problem, right? You cannot actually calculate that. There is no standard method to calculate the depreciation in general case. So forget about calculating the natural capital. When I talk about natural capital, what does that mean? Anything which assesses the production capacity, and it is very difficult to calculate. It's actually a very, very vague concept. Okay, so even the measurement of this itself is difficult, so forget about this. But these two are theoretical concept. In case if it is asked in prelims, you should have some idea. That's why I've given you. It is nothing but, when I talk about genuine savings, nothing but the net savings. Net means gross minus depreciation. Net savings minus natural capital depreciation also will be taken into consideration. Okay, so I'm not talking about the threats to sustainable development, etc. That is depletion of resources, degradation of environment, population, pollution, deforestation, soil erosion, salination of soil. All these things I'm expecting that you know, loss of biodiversity. So these are not from the ethics perspective. So we don't want to discuss all those under the environmental ethics. That is generally part of your economy. Measures to promote sustainable development also, if you see, judicious use of non-renewable resources, development of conventional sources of energy, improve technology, renewable use, okay, avoid production of non-biodegradable items. So organic farming, all these are in general you can write. These are part of your economy. But when it comes to environment, what are the good points that you can write? We'll discuss. So the strategies to address the issue, or you can write measures to promote sustainable development, or strategies to address the issue. One point you can write. These are the keywords, key points which has to be there in your answer, whether it is case study or a theoretical answer. You can talk about compensatory afforestation. So deforestation, if it is there, means compensatory afforestation. So that is first one. Compensatory afforestation. You can also talk about polluter pay principle. That is very important. Polluter pay principle, and the details of that you might have already discussed or studied under environment. Okay, So polluter pay principle. You can also talk about corporate social responsibility. In fact, this is part of your syllabus, ethics syllabus. We will be discussing about this detail later. So corporate social responsibility. Okay. Any social issues, any social problems, education related or anywhere, you can write this corporate social responsibility. Any question, most of the case studies related to any social issues or any social problems, okay, related to sanitation, related to drinking water issues, related to education, related to health or anything, you can use this corporate social responsibility. You can also talk about green technology, energy saving mechanisms. Okay, the 3 R's. What is this 3 R's? What is this? Reuse, and recycle. Yeah. So environmental impact assessment. Okay, so mainly this 3 can be used in your answer. We will discuss the model answers, the case studies later, but just now try to understand these. When it comes to agriculture, what all things you can do? I've told you already, you can promote organic farming, scientific practices, right? Eco-friendly practices. Even in the case of use of fertilizers, you have to use it accordingly. Okay, neem coated, urea, all these are examples. Transportation, promote maximum public transport. Okay, judicious use of non-renewable resources. Anything more you want to add here? When it comes to agriculture, talk about this organic farming to be promoted, like organic fertilizers, biopesticides, weedicides, etc. Cow dung, manure. Okay. Product or price subsidy could be replaced with DBT. Why it is so? Because when it is given for product or if it is price subsidy, the consumption will be more. If it is given as DBT, initially you have to pay from your side, and then reimbursement means the consumption will actually come down. So that will reduce the wastage. Okay. Polluter pay principle, we have discussed already. And you can, from the government side, there should be subsidies for the environment friendly technologies. Like it will act as an incentive, right? Like solar cell. For solar, you can give subsidy. Community participation, everywhere you need to write in your ethics or in even economy answer. Community participation, local bodies, NGOs, international cooperation. Okay. So that we will discuss later. Ethics in international relations. There we will again bring that point. So these are those are purely economic and geographical. Mainly, see, since I've discussed this concept, I've introduced all these points, but otherwise for me, this 3 is at most important from ethics perspective. So when you're writing an answer for this, we don't want to talk about green technology and all these things in detail. Maybe this environmental impact assessment, okay, sometimes as a officer, you may have to talk about this also. This also you have to promote. So these points are very important. Others, gross national happiness, in which context you're talking about? That's an indicator of development. Okay, so that's enough for environmental ethics. Mainly we talk about sustainable development. Okay, sustainable use of resources. That's about environmental ethics, and mainly that definition, that the development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the aspirations of the future generation. So it basically calls for intergenerational equity. Okay. So can we move towards the next concept, that is feminine ethics? Feminine ethics. See, the feminism and feminine ethics are entirely different. Okay. So just write one sentence over there about feminism. Feminism is an ideology which support the upliftment of women. That's enough. So when we talk about feminism, it basically talk about upliftment of women, or it basically talk about equality. It basically called for equality, or it basically called for empowerment of women. Okay. So one more line you can write. It calls for ending the gender discrimination in all forms. In another way, you can interpret in this way: pro women, anything is part of feminism. Pro women means mainly we live in what society? We live in a patriarchal society. So when we talk about patriarchal society, we are talking about what? We are talking about male dominance. Okay. See, by birth there is no inferiority or superiority. Only there is a biological difference. And there is a very famous saying that the mother's role is culturally constructed. It's not that the giving birth to child is the biological role of mother. Okay, but the role after that, once the baby was born, like the ladies want to take leave for 1 year to take care of the baby, that role is culturally constructed. That is, there is nothing to do with inferiority or superiority or your biological aspect for that. Everybody can do that. This is what one famous thinker actually, Anne Oakley, Sylvia Valby. So in their opinion, it is mother's role is actually culturally constructed. Otherwise, there are biological difference, but that biological difference does not demand any or does not give any superiority or inferiority, desirability or undesirability, preferability or rejection. But over a period of time, culture will impose all these values among the individual. So if you remember in our discussion on ethics and morality, we have discussed about values at the individual level, values at the level of society. So over a period of time, at the level of society, some values will be created. That is patriarchal value. What is that value? It's all about desirability of the male child, superiority of the male child, preferability of the male child. Okay, so automatically opposite will be there for female. So automatically the male dominance will come, and that's what the patriarchal society. Now that is so what feminism argues for. Feminism argues against this, against the male dominance. So feminism, when we talk about that, argues for equality, that argue for empowerment. We are not talking about radical feminism. That is entirely different, and there is no scope also for radical feminism. Even we are not interested in discussing about that. We only need to discuss about equality mainly. Now when you discuss about feminism, there are different waves of feminism. Initially it was for political equality. Political equality means what? When we discuss about political equality, from the beginning onwards, it is basically for the right to vote. So even when in India right to vote was given for female, any idea? In which reform, in which act? 1909 Morley Minto reform? No. 1919 Government of India Act? Yes. Okay. So right to vote for women. So mainly for, when we discuss about the political equality, mainly for right to vote in the beginning, but after that, now what is the demand, right? Like what they are demanding, representation in parliament, okay, reservation for female or women in the parliament, Panchayat Raj institutions already there, 33% reservation is there. So current issue is actually the reservation in parliament. So that is what we are talking about, political equality in the waves of feminism or dimensions of feminism. When we discuss political rights like right to vote, separate movements are there. Okay. Then apart from this, socio-economic rights. So what is all about this? When you're demanding socio-economic right means you should be treated equally, right? Like equal wage for equal work. Okay. End of discrimination. Discrimination could be in health, in education, everywhere, even within family itself. You will see a male child and female child will be discriminated in terms of education, in terms of health and all this, right? Even when you're giving food also, that you can see. So this actually demands for socio-economic rights. Mainly you're talking about equality. So everywhere, here also equality, here also equality only, but in the socio-economic aspect, like equal wage for equal work, etc. Okay. The other dimension is what? The radical wave of feminism. So there are different interpretations and different opinions about radical feminism. Like men, that anti-male, that is also radical feminism, rather than demanding for equality. That is one dimension of radical feminism. But otherwise, when you talk about radical feminism, it is basically against patriarchy. Okay, so against patriarchy means against this pink color job, like job of teachers, primary school teachers, and then nurse, etc. So that is what you mean by pink color job, right? Then glass ceiling effect. What is this glass ceiling effect? So if you see most of the companies at the top position, the chances that the woman will be held will be at the top of the top post will be very less. Nowadays in public sector banks and all, you can see women are at the top, but at up to some level, male and female will go together in promotions, but after beyond a level, it is very difficult for the female to move. But if you see, there is nothing you can see, right? That's what you mean by glass ceiling. Some ceiling is there. So that will actually hinder the movement of the lady beyond a particular level. But their male counterpart will move up, like the chairman of companies, etc. Okay, sexual harassment, eve teasing, all these, acid attack. Okay, feminization of agriculture, feminization of poverty, all these you can write. Now, feminization of agriculture mainly happening because the male counterpart is moving or migrating towards some other area in search of better jobs, or maybe from non-green revolution to green revolution area. So the female here have to take up agriculture. So that lead to feminization of agriculture. So automatically, because of this increase in instances of divorce, increase in instances of extramarital relations, increase in instances of migration, because of all this, feminization of poverty is also high. Okay, so when we discuss about, so there is a very famous statement that one is not born as a woman, but one becomes a woman. That's exactly what I've told you before also, the mother's role, which is culturally constructed. So you are not born as woman, but you become woman. That means there are obviously biological differences there. Glass ceiling effect means, you see, two people are entering at the same level, okay, but the male and the female will move next level, maybe at the same time promotion, again at the next level, maybe at the same time, again at the next level. But when you reach a particular level, then from here the female cannot move, only the male will move. Like most of the top positions in the companies, etc., you will see the male. That's what you mean by glass. Something is preventing you to move, and you don't know what is that. So there is a ceiling, but you don't know what is the ceiling. You can't see that ceiling. That's why glass ceiling effect. Okay. So that's about feminism. Now, what do you mean by feminine ethics? So that will be different than what we have discussed under feminism. What do you think is feminine ethics? Like certain values which are specific to female. That's what we are going to discuss here. For example, a male IAS officer and a female IAS officer, the things that we have discussed before, like honesty, integrity, impartiality, political neutrality, all these things are common for everyone. Okay, all this code of conduct or code of ethics and all these are common. But when it comes to feminine ethics, some more is added to, or some more is expected from female than what is expected from a male IAS or IPS officer. Okay, what is that values? Mainly feminine values. Any idea? More love, more care, more compassion, right? So you know the difference between sympathy, empathy, compassion and all this, right? So it is expected that a female IAS officer will be like having better attitude in terms of these aspects when it comes to compared with the male IAS officer or IPS officer or whoever it is, mainly civil servant. So the other side, other aspect, like when it comes to duty, when it comes to the law, when it comes to the rules, code of conduct and code of ethics, all these political neutrality, all these are common to both, but some more expected, like love, care, compassion. So if you get a question like this, these are the main elements that we need to write. Okay. So compassion and sympathy and empathy we discussed in detail in the previous session. The difference also. Emotional intelligence, mainly more than male. Emotions, patience. Okay. More sensitivity. Okay, it is expected. These are the main feminine values. Now, values which are codified as what? Ethics, right? So we are here to understand the values mainly. So when we talk about feminine values, these are the values. Now, this can be asked as otherwise also. What are the main feminine values? If that is a kind of question that you are getting, still you need to write this. What is ethics? When these values are codified and accepted by the whole group. And you see, almost all the female, if you take, these are something which is accepted and visible. Almost all. So majority are, doing or showing the same values. So it becomes ethics, right? At the individual level, these are values or morality. But if it is accepted and all the female is understood in this way, that's when we can call it as feminine ethics or feminine values. Values which are codified as ethics. Alright, so mainly we are talking about this. Any doubts? We can discuss now. We discussed about this. Now what we need to do is we need to discuss about Indian moral philosophers. So we have already discussed about the moral thinkers. We discussed about the Western thinkers. Mill we have discussed and Bentham we have discussed. Okay, Aristotle, Socrates, Plato. Okay, all these thinkers we have discussed. And now we are going to discuss about Indian moral philosophers that we will do in the next session. So here the religious philosophy or the religious principles also will discuss, like Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism. This religious philosophy we have to discuss on one side. At the same time on the other side we have to discuss about Gandhi, Ambedkar. When it comes to Indian thinkers, so much of people are there. So much was given in the chronicle also. You can just go through each of them. But I will be discussing about around 6-7 most important Indian philosophers. Okay, any doubts in today's session?
Hello, sir.
Tell me.
Sir, in environment ethic, whatever the measures you have suggested, that things, those are more of like it has economical or it is just a GS kind of things. Like, what is ethical perspective?
I've told you, it is mainly GS only. Like, see, when it comes to environmental ethics, ethically, what you can say, you can only say sustainable development. That is what you can say. And in that, maybe 2-3 dimensions which I have discussed in the beginning, that you can say polluter pay principle. That is a kind of ethics only. Polluter, if you are polluting, you have to pay. That is part of ethics. If you see from the weaker section side, who is getting the benefit? The larger corporations or companies are getting the benefit, so they have to pay for it. There is an environmental cost, and who's getting the benefit of that cost, they have to pay it. That is ethics only. Okay, corporate social responsibility, you are making the profit at the cost of environment, so you have to spend it for the public. That is also ethics only. So if you look deep down into the points that I've told you, there is a the ethical dimension. That's why I've told you these are the 3 or 4 specific points that you can write in your ethics answer. Otherwise, these are general. Organic farming, fertilizer, pesticide, these are general and everybody will do that.
But I didn't find any individual perspective in this, because it is a